Hate speech violates order and stability as it attracts chaos and violence. It kills self-esteem and obstructs nation building. Reasons why the act is strongly condemned by people and nations. The social media platform observers are of the view that it is the culprit in advancing hate speech. It is widely held that as Nigeria approaches the 2019 general elections, some politicians are increasingly patronizing the social media with hate speech against their opponents to their advantage. This act, analysts say, contradicts the media code of ethics. According to the code, no news item shall encourage or incite people to crime, lead to public disorder, be repugnant to public feelings, or contain an offensive referensive to any person alive or dead, or generally be disrespectful to human dignity. Many say the Buhari administration is a victim of hate speech in an unprecedented manner. This has raised questions on how are things left to degenerate to a dismal proportion. What are the sanctions against such nefarious act? What are the lessons obtainable from other countries in combating the trend? Answers after this background are reported by Anthony Fossum.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another.
In Nigeria today, the hate being spewed on our radio stations across the country is so alarming. If you tune into my radio stations today, you will be alarmed and shocked by the things being said, the careless incitement to violence, and the level of insensibility and irresponsibility, especially to the multi-religious, multi-ethnic nature of our country.
Media outfits and social media platforms have been awash with an avalanche of commentaries and statements, which created a tense atmosphere. It is in the light of this that the National Council on Information, the highest decision-making body in information management in the country, called for an extraordinary meeting with the theme, Hate Speeches, Fake News and National Unity. Explaining how pervasive the phenomenon has gotten, Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed says the perpetrators throw courtesy and professionalism away for personal and selfish interests.
What do these phenomena of hate speech, disinformation, and fake news have in common? They are all capable of destabilizing the system, inciting people to violence, and weakening the people's confidence in their government. These dangerous trends are threatening the very foundation of our national unity.
Making the point that the federal government will not condone such reckless acts, citing himself as a victim of fake news spinners, he recalled when he was quoted out of context recently, and also recalled the build-up to the 2015 elections. All this, the minister said, must be resisted by the entire citizenry.
We all must say no to hate speech, either on our radio and television stations, newspapers, the social media, on our phones, or in the public space. We must be resolute in tackling the cankerworm of hate speech, disinformation, and fake news.
Plateau State Governor Simon Lalong, who was represented by his deputy, Professor Sonny Tioden, commended the initiative of the National Council on Information for convening the meeting with the aim of finding ways of checking the hate speech and fake news phenomenon in the country. He said the trend has succeeded in hitting the polity and polarizing the people. Therefore, the earlier it is nipped in the bud, the better for the unity of the country.
Address the problems that relate to the effective communication of the challenges the country is going through, and how to popularize the sincere efforts government has made and is making to get the effects of these multi-sectoral challenges facing our country.
Hate speech, we don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Well, thank you, Anthony Folsom. We've been joined in the studio today by Malam Sani Zoro, Honorable Member of the House of Representatives and Chairman House Committee on IDPs and Member Committee of Information. And fundamentally, for this discussion, Malam Sani Zoro is a journalist through and through, and the former president of the Nigeria Union of Journalists, and now a fellow of the NUJ. You're welcome.
Thank you for having me, Ali.
Thank you very much. Mr. Femi Adishino, Special Advisor to President Media and Publicity, also a seasoned journalist of high repute, and a former President Nigeria Guild of Editors. And I always cherish to, do I tell the public, who wanted the #1 of Igbo land, and which means that a brother in the other side of the country, let's put it that way.
Yes,
so you've been going around in your journalistic profession, so to speak, and now you are managing Mr. President and the presidency. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Yes. I have Dr. Muhammad Mustafa Aleki, National Commissioner in charge of Planning, Monitoring and Strategy, the Independent National Electoral Commission. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Yes. I have Professor Chudi Nwazurike, former member, House of Representatives, an international and public affairs analyst. You're welcome to the program, Prof.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. I am Aliyu Bababaro. You can join us on the discussion through Twitter and the phone calls. And when you make your phone calls, please, you can lower the volume of your television set so that we will communicate very effectively and audibly. So you're welcome. Well, Malam Salis, let me start with you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let me go back to the ethics, so the projection of what the media is supposed to be for the nation. I bring you back to Chief Obafemi Awolowo in 1959, precisely October 31st, when he was inaugurating the first television network in Africa. He said, "I know that you will all gain much from this great medium of mass information and instruction. It is a powerful influence for good. And I am confident that in due course, it will assist in making our great country greater." I ask you all to rejoice with us on this memorable occasion and to grasp with both hands the full advantages with this more than miracle offers. That is the media, generally.
Great.
Are we having what we projected to be having from the media?
Okay. Now, if I may, from the great speech by the sage, the late Chief Obafemi Awolowo, which you have just quoted, I can take away two things. First of all, he set the social agenda for the media. The second one, it is absolutely clear from what he has said that there is what is called Nigerian journalism. Or he has talked about what is supposed to be Nigerian journalism, what the media is expected to do, the role, the obligation, as well as the responsibility of the Nigerian media. Now, people tend to forget that while journalism as a profession has a global definition and the universality of the profession is not in doubt, but there is what is called national journalism. Your own profession must be anchored around your core values as well as the objectives of your own nation state. So there is British journalism, there is Cameroonian journalism, there is Chinese journalism. That is in the way it is practiced. In other words, The ethics that you have talked about, all the legal frameworks that are available to guide the conduct of the media as well as the code of practice for journalists, including the sections of the Constitution that talk about the obligations of the media, specifically Section 22 of the Nigerian Constitution, and then Section 89, which provides for freedom of expression as well as the ownership of the media itself. They have specified the role, the obligation that the media should play. Now, as it relates to the hate speech, which is this evening's subject matter, we can also go to...
We come into that. I just want us to examine the media in Nigeria's perspective, as you said, the context of Nigeria,
the context,
and
yes,
foreign national interests, so to
Very
speak.
good. Now,
are we attaining that?
Well, this is work in progress, in the sense that just like in other professions, the media continues to evolve, and in that process, challenges also are always coming out. Now, the way to engage with those challenges, I am sure Femi will agree with me as well as other panelists, we need to engage with those challenges as rigorously as possible and as they come, with new initiatives of confronting them. And we also need to draw parallels from other countries in the manner in which such challenges are always tackled.
Yes.
Because that is the only way Nigeria can benefit from the global policy process. Now, in that direction, I can say that yes, the Nigerian media, like all our colleagues argue, we have grown in leaps and bounds since 1959, or if you like, since the coming of the first newspaper, Iwe Irohin in Abeokuta, through the orientation that the press has had during the anti-colonial struggle, up to today that we have private newspapers, private television, and so on and so forth. But definitely, I am not particularly pleased with the kind of regulation that should have been in place, because we need strengthening of our regulatory mechanisms at all times.
Talking about regulations, let me go straight to the professor. And you've been analyzing the kind of comparative analysis as far as Nigeria's media is concerned in relations to the global system itself. You talk about Irohin, the newspaper that came from Abeokuta, and I remember Zik has his own West African pilot. A very prominent politician in Kano, Malam Tanko Yakasi, was an editor of that newspaper at that time. So you could see the coming together between political atmosphere of the country and the media. How do you analyze that? Have they been able to go together right from independence, as they fought together to gain Nigeria's independence for the development of this great country?
Well, when we were at the School of Mass Communication at University of Lagos many years ago, and I used to be a member of the Daily Times editorial board when there was just really one major paper along with New Nigerian in our mass comm days. I can tell you very clearly that many of us who had other options chose to study mass communication and follow the mass-mediated world, as Americans would say, that was really unfolding before us. Because Nigeria is a multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-everything you can think of. There are very few countries with Nigeria's sociological profile. So that creating national integration out of this mix is a context of responsible journalism, but also the opposite, irresponsible journalism. And one can say very clearly that what ails us is partly in the public domain in terms of the way we frame issues, questions, and so on. Honorable Zoro has said it all. In other words, when we think of the media themselves are a work in progress. But society itself is also a work in progress. It's really a question of where media practitioners in terms of their professionalism and where the regulators in terms of their proficiency and in that lawmakers in terms of making laws. Section 22 in the Constitution is very clear about the the role of the press, more or less, and also the need for press freedom. And of course, Chapter 2 in the Constitution is all about the freedoms and duties of citizens and so on. So it's all very clear. But if we look at the Nigerian experience, it's really on balance a mixed record. It's on balance also that even on national integration issues, we have not quite gotten it all right. But I would say that if we think of the journey since the 1850s, I think, then when Iwe Irohi began in Abuja, but I would also say ever since the Cold War ended in 1989, there really has been a massive explosion, especially with the coming of the digital age, the new media, the social media, that has really expanded the media framework without necessarily abolishing the role of the radio, the role of the press, and so that's all still there. But I would say that with regard to your question on the international context, you know, it varies country by country. That's, I think, was what Honorable Senator was trying to say, you know, the media and national interests. You can't really think of the media in isolation. They're part of a national quest and so on. The difference is that when you have democracies, it's relatively free. But there are still national objectives, the national quest. What is the national quest? The national quest in this country is voluntary integration of the various ethnicities, the various particularities into one great black Pan-African nation, if we can achieve that. And the media has to be able to do that. But comparatively, we're no different from what has happened in Britain. We're no different from what has happened in America, which I know fairly well, where there's no difference between what is happening in Nigeria and what has happened in China and Russia and so on. The issue is, where are we going with all this? In other words, is the Constitution the habit of what we do and so on? But I'm sure
just as Marlon Sanis always say, the issue of regulation.
Yes.
That one nation differs from the other. Let me come to INEC. You know, fundamentally, the beauty of democracy is the principle of change, and that change comes with elections. If media had been partners in progress as far as electioneering body is concerned, throughout, right from independence to this particular time. But now we found that INEC somehow is blowing the whistle, that we're very jittery, the nation is jittery about the role of the media or the newsmakers themselves in trying to have a veritable election that will usher in good governance for the country. How do you analyze? From the beginning, it's ironical. If they are partners, why now are we jittery about that?
Well, I think there is cause to worry because of a number of factors that are playing out in the political space, particularly now as we move towards general elections coming up next year, February and March. Now, incidentally, one would expect from the historical perspective of the days of our sages like Olowa and Co, where there was some sort of a synergy between the political actors and the media in what would appear to be something like a convergence of interest to build a nation. And so you might say that they have a shared objective to move the country from the colonial period into a post-colonial era of that flourishes with development, economic growth, and satisfaction and happiness across. But somehow, you know, that has not really happened for some of the reasons that the Prof and others have mentioned. But coming to the present moment, and since, you know, the last series of elections in Nigeria, we have seen that, you know, there's a number of factors that tend to agitate the political space, and which creates, you know, problem for electioneering in Nigeria. And the issue of hate speech is a very important one in this regard, because the advent of social media and the fact there are many devices that allow you to connect to social media, that allow you to have instant messages, and then from traditional, you know, different from traditional ways of getting information like radios or newspapers. I really sometimes wonder about how the newspaper business is doing these days, because so many people probably don't read this, and they have this on their tablets, on their phones, and breaking news and all kinds of, you know. So this has also exacerbated, you know, the problem. Instead of making it a medium that will help to bring about cohesiveness, a medium of channeling proper information, people to be properly informed, to take evidence-based decision, it is the contrary that we are saying. It is making people to antagonize each other more and the argument becomes more virulent, you know, to the point it's very distasteful. And some people were using this media and these devices to create mini wars across the landscape. And I think this is not a good development. This is not the dream and I thought the sage had foreseen, you know, when the first radio station broadcaster was, you know, established in Nigeria. For us at INEC is very troubling because it is a form of violence for the electoral process. Because people are misinformed, people do not check, they just take liberty, you know, depending on what platforms you subscribe to, and the platforms are growing, you know, by the day, and people seem to sort of keeping up with them, and so you find yourself looking at multiple, you know, platforms in a day where you are getting all kinds of conflicting information. People take sides, and I think it's worrisome because going into an election where we need to normalize the political space so that people have a semblance of a good, credible and free election that is free of rancor.
Yes.
But when you see this sort of things happening, you sort of wonder. So the challenge is how do we engage key stakeholders to see how to mitigate this potential, you know, negative effect of social media that is empowering, you know, hate speech and hate, you know, hatred, you know, across the land.
We would like to hear about those key stakeholders you have identified as electoral body in the course of the discussion. Let me come to Mr. Additional. You know, I always tell you that your office, I envy your office, but I don't envy the responsibility of that office. And secondly, I think Mr. President Muhammadu Buhari, because of his pedigree and the work he does, is a sellable material, but very difficult to sell within the terrain of our country. In the past, I remember our Honorable Minister, Lai Mohammed, made reference to, even during his journeys to overseas, some medical leave and all these things. There was some propagation about his purported death and so many things you've been able to manage. How do you find yourself as a former president of Nigeria Guild of Editors? It was so welcome. This is the fourth stage, a kind of providing the balancing act amongst the three institutions of governance between the government and the society. How do you see the terrain?
Thank you. Please, can we have that quotation by the sage again? If you have
Okay. Let me repeat from the beginning. I know that you will all gain much from this great medium of mass information and instruction. It is a powerful influence for good. And
Thank you. Yeah. That's what I wanted.
Okay.
You know, if Paulo was alive today and he was to speak at the inauguration of a medium,
yes,
he would say a different thing. He said it was a powerful tool for good.
For good.
Those were days of innocence. And that innocence has been violated. And you may never regain it. He saw television and the media generally as a powerful tool for good.
And instruction.
But now it has evolved. And we know that it's not only a powerful tool for good, it's also a very powerful tool for evil.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have seen it across the world. The last American election, we know the role that the media played in terms of hate speech, in terms of fake news. The two go together. There is almost a symbiotic relationship between them. So we saw the role it played. We have seen the role it has played in many countries of the world. We saw the role it played in 2015 election in Nigeria. And we are seeing the build-up towards the 2019 election.
Yeah.
So the media was seen that way in 1959. But if Papa was around today, he will say the media is a powerful tool for both good and evil.
Yes.
And then he would warn that make sure you use it for good. Make sure you use it for national development. So we see that the media has evolved over the years, and it has evolved both positively and negatively. Yes. Now, about specifically to your question, yes, my duty as a special advisor on media to the president. Like you said, you like the office, but you don't envy
the responsibility.
The responsibility. It's a tough one. It is a It's a tough one. But this kind of office cannot be held without conviction. If all you want is a job, it may not be worth it at the end of the day, because the insults you get, the things that get thrown at you, the fake news about you, all sorts of things, it will not be worth it. But when you take it out of conviction, because you believe in the person you are going to serve, then it's easy for you to just take everything in your strides and do what you need to do. So that's my attitude to it. Conviction. And
you're happy with your constituency as far as these things are concerned?
I understand the constituency. It's not that I'm happy with everything the constituency does, but I also understand why they do certain things. And because I came right from that constituency, I can put myself in their position. At times when we release certain information, I can think like a newsman. And I know where they will pick it from, the slant they will give to it.
So you nip it in the bud, kind of.
So when I see it the next day, I just laugh, because I can put myself in the position of the person taking the editorial decision. So it's very important that if you will do this kind of job, you must have conviction.
Yes, talking about conviction, and perhaps using the Nigerian parlance, Malam Sani Zoro, that Malam Sani Zoro is in the soup because he's a journalist and he finds himself as a member of the Committee of Information and doing all this and that. And the interrelationship among the three basic institutions of democracy, executive, legislature, and the judiciary, especially the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature. And we have the superintendent umpire of democracy, let me put it that way. That is the fourth estate. Are you comfortable?
Well, how I wish in this country, as we have developed the media sector, we would have been calling the media probably the first estate of the realm, not even the fourth. Yes, I would have wanted to promote the media to the first estate of the realm, and we are still committed to that dream. Now, we believe that Nigeria has all the potentials of actually becoming a media power, especially within Africa. Why not? We have the population, we have a very sophisticated elite, we have what it takes within the sector itself. If you look at the main actors, journalists, advertisers, and public relations practitioners, we have gurus. We have had, you see, the generation of the Alade Odunewus and so on, who practice in British newspapers as well as broadcast media. Even those who pioneered the Nigerian Television Authority. If we are to remember the good old days, the pioneers, you know that they can stand anywhere. And believe me, this crop of journalists that we have are also sufficiently educated. The only problem I think we have is that we have lost focus. For instance, like other panelists have said, in a multicultural, multi-ethnic, a multi-religious society like Nigeria, we should be able to agree that part of the media's role will be to mediate in social conflict, so that way the media properly answers its name by mediating, in conflicts, not in exacerbating such conflicts. That's one. As far as the legislature executive is concerned, I do not think that the Nigerian media is giving sufficient attention to how there should be harmony, the points of departure, and why actually the two arms of government are to play different roles in order to provide for checks and balances. No, what the media is basically interested in is to sensationalize the news. When there is a friction between the two arms of government, they just hype it. But to go deep in analyzing why there should be such, conflicts between the two, why there must be such conflicts, and why it is good for democracy, people are lost. People are not educated about why these things happen. because we do not have the quality newspapers anymore. We do not have the quality analysts in the broadcast media and other places. So we are doing with half-baked information things that are not very beneficial. Like Femi said, gone are the days when news itself used to be defined as social good. That was how it was considered. And actually, journalism practice was about public good. I think it was in that sense that Chief Ao was talking about good, public good. That is just the aim of journalism and the media itself. But now it has been replaced by something near evil. Some of the headlines are so devilish and all that kind of things. But that being the case, what I'm saying is that as frustrating as the environment is, we still can do so many things. A range of things can be brought into play in order to check, to address, as well as arrest these pervasive practices. There are other societies that have done worse. Take Rwanda, for instance. In Rwanda, the media played such a negative role that promoted the genocide. But today, even from Europe, they go to Uganda because Uganda has become a model. This afternoon, I watch on your station how Chief Winfred, if I call her name correctly, the head of service of the Federation, led a team to Rwanda to go and understudy how the civil service in Rwanda was reconstructed. And she said that the world these days, everyone goes to Rwanda because Rwanda has suddenly resurrected and has become a model to follow.
So in short, is the media had a very vital role to play, quintessentially in Rwanda for that matter.
In Rwanda, yes.
Especially when the promotion of alternative dispute resolution after all this program on
Exactly.
We've started having some callers online. Hello, you're welcome to Tuesday Live. Welcome to Tuesday Live.
Hello.
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 Hello, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Afobaje.
Hello.
Hello. We can hear you. Go ahead and talk.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Hello.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Good evening. Go ahead and talk.
My
Please speak.
contribution to this hate speech.
Yes.
The most of problem we have in Nigeria now is our media. It's our media. And the way our people, they are doing is very bad idea. The problem between our media and the journalists, that's the problem we have in Nigeria. And the most of people, they are using this hate speech is the opponent party. So that's what we have in Nigeria now. It's the opponent party that they are using the hate speech. So no matter what people say, they are deceiving themselves. And we know what President Muhammadu Buhari is doing for Nigeria now. No matter how people blackmail him, we still love him and he's our president. So we don't care about. That's my comment about. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Prof, there's one issue that Malam Sani Zoro pointed out, the issue of education. I'm directing this question to you because from the academia,
Yes.
There's a philosophy which says that an enlightened society is easy to govern but hard to oppress. But an unenlightened society is easy to oppress and hard to govern. Are we finding ourselves in that same scenario? Is the media, so to speak, or the hate speeches, let me put it that way, taking advantage of the situation?
Thank you. You know, the reality is that the media, if I may use this in the singular, has the very, very unique role of being an agenda setter for society. You wake up in the morning and it's what's in the headlines.
Platform for social change.
Yes, that forms the conversation. The media does not tell you what to think, but they tell you exactly, does not tell you how to think, but they tell you what to think about. You know, there are thousands of news items almost every day, and maybe they publish just roughly 1% or 2%, and that's what we have to live with. So that's one. Two is that the media in the modern world. Remember that the mass media, as we know it, is a phenomenon that's less than 200 years old. About the time of the French Revolution in 1789, that's when the media as an organized entity became a factor. And by the time Iwe Rohi and the rest were coming up, for a small, educated elite, so right up to the coming of the West African Pilot, the Daily Service, and all the other papers and so on that made the Nigerian colonial world take. All those were really for the educated classes. Now, what is missing, and what has always been an issue, has been the problem of professionalism. You ask the difference between the international standard and what we do here is professionalism. And in fact, going back to what Femi has again shown, he can do his job by mostly thinking as a professional. Simply say, this is the job I have to do. But professionalism is something you have to do with conviction. Yes. Now, going back to your political take on societies that are governable and ungovernable, that's a very brilliant one. I can tell you clearly that you have to have the question of national interest and national quest, as I said. National interest is managing your situation as you have it at that time. National quest is where you want to be between now and some other time, for instance. Well, how many generations, what is the direction? Bottom line is that the media is so much part of the mix that you can't think of Nigeria as we know it without the media and its practitioners. And we just brought up the question of the social media, for instance, which I think is even the galloping arena of the media world, because very clearly over time, the digital revolution will encompass, it already has. Even what we're doing here right now is probably going online somewhere. Yeah. So bottom line, quite simply, is that we're caught up in a new society. We can call it the information society. This is a world of globalization, as we know very well. It's even called the post-globalization era. So we have a situation where society itself is changing, and the media will have to catch up. But part of catching up is for the various gatekeepers within the media world to insist on the one variable that should be universal, whether in Nigeria or Russia or China, and that is media professionalism. To the extent that we define what is news in this day and age. When people like us were being trained, there was a clear idea about what is news. It has to be factual, it has to be objective, and it has to be very clear to the reader or to the listener. But right now, almost every person who has a Samsung or who can get online is an editor, and so on. Yeah. So fake news comes in, opinionated news comes in, everything is mixed, and you really worry. For the younger generation, the kids under the age of 15, by the time they grow up in this kind of world and reach the age of 30, would they even understand what it means to have a professional news fair, as it were? That's the reality we face here, that the world is changing, the media world is changing, and the only security we have is really to insist on media professionalism. In other words, to be able to defend whatever it is that you put out there in the public interest.
Yeah, very much later in the course of the discussion, we come about this issue of control. We're still coming back to Alan Sanizuro, control and regulations and what have you. Another caller online. Hello, you're welcome to Tuesday Live.
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. You're welcome. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I greet all of you there.
Thank you.
And Mr. Femi Adesina, in the media publicity to the president for the great work that he is doing in the country.
Thank you.
And I also want to thank our beloved president for what he's also doing. The only way we can avoid this hate speech because of the danger is to live in peace with one another. And let's say things that will unite us together in love and in oneness. Because these are the things that our forefathers did, and it has taken this country to where it is today. So I want to appreciate you all for this great work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I just overheard Madam Sanizuro saying that is love speech to the ears of any additional.
Well, not just the young man. Well,
and the first caller, the lady.
The first caller. No, yes. Very clearly, people are very concerned.
Yes.
The tension is unnecessary. There's just too much of it, and so on. This is one country. I mean, if you look at the digital age, the younger generation, they don't really care about a whole range of what it is that we think is really important. Yes. There's a whole new generation of people growing growing up and they're globalized. They want a different kind of society.
Yes, it's a welcome development. Let me come to Madam Mustafa Leki. Talking about the politicians. Well, my senior colleague here, Madam Sani Zoro, is here. He's now a politician. They say Nigerians are tied, and a lawmaker, he's a lawmaker, are tied to the tune with the shenanigans and the peccadillos of the political elite. Let me put it that way. At the meeting of the National Council on Information, the Honorable Minister of Information said that the growing cases of hate speech, disinformation and fake news in the country are being orchestrated to discredit the government, destabilize the polity and make the country ungovernable. You've observed that as far as INEC is concerned. That is why you raised an alarm.
Yes, I think it goes across all sectors. And
Yes.
it's much more prominent now that we're looking down the general elections of 2019. And recently, last week, INEC, in consultation with some of our partners, organized a workshop. The workshop was targeting, the press people to do proper reporting of election processes, conditions and stuff like that. And this is born on the fact that INEC is, as an AMB, is looking for avenue to ensure that the proper thing is communicated so that the electorates are educated properly and the key actors, stakeholders like political parties are educated properly. So we need to find a way to get these messages across. And we're still using the traditional method, which is getting press people to come to workshop and participate and take them through the ethics and the objectives of proper reporting of election. But we must face the fact that this is a runaway train, the issue of this social media. Social media is something that is very virtual. As we are struggling to engage stakeholders, because INEC strives on engaging stakeholders so that they can have some convergence of opinions so that we can move things out. But who are the stakeholders really for social media? And this hate speech is something that emanates from social media because it's so nebulous, it's so everywhere, it's so virtual that you can't really feel and touch it. So you can't call it stakeholders of social media practitioners so they can sit down with you and see what you can do and educate them through the process. So for us at INEC, we see instances where misinformations are disposed and people just latch onto it and they go from one platform to the other. People make outlandish things that are not true. People will say that in some states in the country, 100% of PVCs have been distributed, 100%, which is not true. And all you have to do is to go to INEC website and get the fact. But nobody's interested in the fact because, like say, bad news, like hate news, they sell very fast and people latch onto it. So how do we get hold of these practitioners? And everybody is latching onto that. Even some of the papers, they are very strongly opinionated in terms of the project certain particular political views and so on. So there is no real objective discussion going on, on the, in the space. So we're very worried, and we want to make sure we engage with stakeholders, give them the facts, take them through the process so that the election and the electoral processes can be well understood and people can engage it and do accordingly. But it's a very difficult thing for us to do. Because of the advent of social media, everybody gets its news from social media. They say things that INEC did not say, they will not carry the news, and we can have them to have a discussion with them, like we have, stakeholder meetings with security people, with the police, with CSOs, with the media. But we have not had the social media practitioners come around, because they are not really, they are faceless, but they are everywhere, ubiquitous, and actually practicing what is very destructive.
You talked about, earlier, you talked about other stakeholders. National Orientation Agency, just recently National Council for Arts and Culture converged on Port Harcourt to cement the relations of the nation through culture and tourism and what have you. What do you do? INEC is superintendent umpire of elections. All those stakeholders and the real conventional media in their traditional practice, do you do critical analysis of what they do generally and bring them into the fold?
Yes, we do this. We have a regular roundtable discussion. We have the Electoral Institute of INEC, which is quite strong, which launches research and engage people to do research in various topics, and then we have roundtable to discuss the outcome of this research. But like I was saying earlier, I don't know to what extent people are relying on the traditional media for information. You know, I mean, we work with them as we speak. I just told you we just finished a workshop with media practitioners, you know, somewhere here in Abuja, it's across the West African. Media practitioners from all West Africa, Economic State came and attended this workshop. This is our own way of trying to engage traditional, you know, mass media so that we can impart on them the rules, the regulations, what needs to be done, and otherwise. But still, it's an uphill battle because most people are not listening to that. They're using other methods.
I think we are coming back to what Malan Sani Zoro is talking about, the education of the system itself, that is the social system. But we have a phone call. We are coming back to that. You're welcome. This is Tuesday Live. Hello, go ahead and speak. This is Tuesday Live.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Abdullahi Bajar.
You're welcome, Abdullahi.
I want to contribute.
Go ahead.
So my contribution is that the first thing I want to greet all the Nigerian jerseys in the stadium for doing good for us.
The Nigerian,
especially Fema Adesina. If you can remember this profile, Abdullahi Bajar on Facebook.
Yes.
NTA Nigeria has nothing to do with to pray to Almighty Allah continue protect, guard and bless NTA station.
Thank you.
We still continue praying to our Mr. President. I am from Plateau State. Kanam local government, my headquarters is Benji. So the kind journey we started from 2015 till now. We witnessed good things from President Muhammad Buhari. I am not supporting any councillor. I'm not supporting any rep. I'm not supporting any senator. I'm not supporting any governor. Unless if you are on my political party. Person who I know in Nigeria now is President Muhammad Buhari. I'm fully supported President Muhammad. I can't support anybody. Maybe he get problem with his party or with the APC party to tell me that I'm angry because of my senator not get ticket. Or I'm for President Muhammad Buhari, like the way Nigeria is President Muhammad Buhari. We see many things as dialogue. You know, Kalam local government and Plateau State very well. We are living in peace. More especially Kalam local government. We the first peace, unity and very progressive local government in Kalam local government.
Thank you, Abdullahi. That is good news.
I want to thank God.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Abdullahi. Good news. There's another dimension to head news, away from politics. We're coming back to that. Politics, after all, is a platform for social change, and that is what we do. Let me quote again. The growing phenomenon of hate speech, as well as the disinformation and fake news campaign, breeds separatism, nepotism, regionalism, tribalism. That was what the Minister of Information said, which we all know. These are empirical evidence that happened. Malam Sani Zoro made reference to Rwanda. How do you see the situation, especially against the backdrop of insecurity that is facing us in the face? Always government expending human and material resources towards combating it.
Yes, if anybody loves Nigeria at this point and is concerned about her future, such a person will know that this is not the time to engage in hate speech. Things are bad enough in terms of interrelationship in the country. By the time you engage in hate speech, you are just exacerbating the situation. Hate speech, what is the intention of hate speech? You want to create discord, you want to create disharmony, you want to incite. That therefore means you don't love the country. Nigeria is like a tinderbox All you just need is a spark and it can go. And we all have a duty to keep our country together.
Yes.
Anybody who then engages in hate speech now, particularly a politician, who should campaign based on issues, and he begins to throw mud at another person, then does not love the country. If you want to lead the people, and you will first set the country ablaze, who then will be left to lead? I remember the late MK Abiola who said, you don't first urinate into a well from which you will draw water to drink. So hate speech is like first urinating in that well,
yes,
from which you will draw drinking water. Therefore, anybody, individual, party, group that loves Nigeria should not engage in hate speech at this point in time.
You are a lawmaker. First.
We are trying, yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Then we describe you as a politician, and again as a journalist.
Yes.
These convergent points, like the Prof has been talking about, the society and the state, the role to play. If you don't have a buyer, you won't sell. So, as Malaleki said, we absorb everything. We take a look at the conventional media.
Is he a malam or a chief?
He's a chief.
You're confused. He's a doctor.
He's a doctor. Yes. You see, when you see that, when you see that cap, you understand.
Multiple identities.
Yes. When you see that cap, you know he's with the grassroots. He's with the people. So
INEC is with the grassroots.
Yes, INEC is with the grassroots. So when we have that, we need really to see, are we helpless as a nation? Do we always consume anything that comes from anybody?
Yes.
And how do we regulate? How do you take a look at that?
Yes. First of all, let me remember by acknowledging Femi as ambassador of love speech. You know, we had practice in Concord, we had practice in the Sun, before Femi took a break to what he's doing now and where I am now. And I believe we'll all go back to the media. But on a serious note, I think, really, by even defining the opposite of hate speech, by having love speech, we will be setting an agenda to say that we have an alternative. Just like I've always argued that if we talk of social media, its variant is antisocial media. So what you do is a media that is antisocial. You have to isolate it, you have to brand it, and you have to know how to fix it. That's one. Secondly, Aliu, you also have to remember that the United Nations Security Council at that level, in 2015, through resolution 2222, I'm sure Professor Chudi will remember, it took a look at the role of the media worldwide, especially in the context of preempting social conflicts, as well as its vulnerability, the vulnerability of the media as a platform for, hate speaking, incitement to disaffection, and causing wars and conflicts. Resolution 2222 of 2015, I think 17th of October, which means that even at that level, the UN Security Council is very sensitive about this pervasive practice. But it's a phenomenon that we are managing, and we will have to continue to do a lot to fix. Now, in my own opinion, I thank Dr. Lekki by giving us the information of how they had just conducted a workshop, for media organizers. This is one way of, engaging with the issue. But I think this business of regulating the media is too important to be left to the media practitioners alone. Now, this Nigerian Media Code of Election Coverage, which was authored in 2014 and recently reviewed, like Femi said, about 3 months ago. The signatories are all institutional stakeholders in the Nigerian media, Newspaper Proprietors Association, Nigerian Union of Journalists, Guild of Editors, International Press Center, and so on. I don't agree with this. Nigerians also must insist that we must input into the process of the kind of products that the media eventually sell to us. We have to insist that we don't like this and we like this. We cannot just be so open to receiving everything that will be, negative to our core values, that will undermine our unity and so on. It is in this context that we are actually protesting against these pervasive tendencies, this practice of anything comes in the media. Secondly, we have to fight this through policy. And honestly speaking, I'm not happy with the role that the executive arm of government is playing. As far as I'm concerned, it's not doing anything. The National Assembly, you can remember, beginning with the Senate and the House of Representatives, in the course of even last year, they wanted to come up with a regulation that will set up a commission to regulate, the practice, especially on the platform of the social media. But the reaction we got from the executive was, no, we don't want to tamper with freedom of expression. And we said, no, we will have to exercise this governance with responsibility. If we do not attack this thing, believe me, it will swallow us. And look at the kind of people that have been using the platform for the kind of things that are happening now, which are complaining. They all trooped to the National Assembly to say, no, don't tamper with freedom of freedom. We do know that even within the media institution itself, there are those who are not friendly to law and order. There are those who are anti-unity of this country. And we must insist that those of us who want to live in peace, those of us who believe that the media must be regulated, just like all other professions are regulated, we have to do the right thing. And the right thing is to insist that we converge from time to time. We have scholars like Professor Chudi. There are so many interested parties, in this business, so that we will be discussing about the impact of the media on society from time to time, reviewing what we are doing. Permit me, if I may sound, very critical of the media. That does not mean, I'm not in love with the media. There were times when I was its chief defender, and up to now, I'm ready to defend those values, those ethics. Yes. But we are against those perverts that have just intruded into the profession because of the availability, the abundance of digital media, to wreak havoc. Because we are proud of our profession. We went to journalism schools, we trained, and that cannot be in vain. We cannot just sit down or we sit by when some people are wrecking the profession and plunging the country into chaos, like you said. So that is where regulation has to come.
Okay.
Yes, the ambassador of...
Let's debate this a little bit.
Okay, yes.
That's how he's raised about discussion, because this really is pointing to an existential reality that we have to deal with.
Thank you.
The other piece of the equation is, of course, the whole question of freedom of speech, right?
Yes.
And the implication of this for democracy. Yes. So once you begin to regulate, that means you restrict. And I'm not come down one word on this, but what is your own position on freedom of speech?
You expand also. Yeah. You expand the frontiers of press freedom by protecting the media. It's part of regulation. For instance, I can give you reference to the Nigerian Press Council Act of 1992.
Okay.
It is also to enhance the practice of journalism profession. Because if you go to Nigerian Press Council now, even though it is dysfunctional, if you like, but there are research departments, you know, that are calculated, you know, to do a lot of research and see how it can enhance the practice, just like, you know, Press Complaints Commission in the UK,
yes,
or the other ombudsman. But what we have in Nigeria, we want to subscribe that, and we just built in what we call ombudsman in the various media organizations. How can you be a judge unto yourself?
Yes.
Let other people judge us as well, because we also judge people. So the watchdog must be watched.
Okay, there's a caller who wants to watch the watchdog. Hello, you're welcome. This is Tuesday Live. You are on with us. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah.
My name is Umar and I'm calling from BIRNIN, KEBBI.
Anachi, you're welcome.
You see,
all the way.
This hate speech is against the guidance. Every profession has its own ethics, I believe.
Yes.
If you watch the traditional media, for example, there was one campaign on AIT about Muhammad Buhari where they said, Muhammad Buhari, don't kill my parents, something like that. So all those things need to be guided in accordance with professional ethics. That is the most important thing. Now, another thing is that there should be a control of social media. Social media is another way of promoting ethics and hate speech. There is no media without regulation. In other countries, social media has control. We must too control social media specifically. Honestly, there is this law of what do you call it? Freedom of speech.
Yes.
Freedom of speech does not permit you to write whatever you want and send it through the media. Honestly, so we should be guided. We should be controlled. We should be. There should be a distance, a instant between freedom of speech as well as social media.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Continue to bless our country.
Thank you, Anachi. We'll soon go on break, but before then, I want Femi Adesina to speak on this matter.
I would like to add to what Malam Sani Zuru said, and maybe possibly put things in the proper perspective.
Yes.
When that effort to do some regulation came through the National Assembly, it was not an executive bill.
No.
But suddenly, the noise that resonated from different parts of the country was that, oh, Buhari has come again. He wants to stifle free speech.
Yes.
They linked it with Decree 4 of the military regime and all that. And that was the noise everywhere.
Another fake news.
So you distance yourself.
Well, we had to come out to say...
You ran away.
No. We had to come out to say, this is not an executive bill.
Yes.
The National Assembly can do whatever it wants to do, but don't hang it around the neck of President Buhari. Because some people were bent on changing the narrative that it was the president that was behind it. We just were putting the record straight that no, it's not an executive bill. So the National Assembly didn't have to chicken out if that was what it did.
No, we didn't.
Okay.
You just dropped it because it was so hot for you to
well, you could have gone ahead. Because I believe that the absolute freedom hurts the person that wields that freedom. So there must
becomes a license.
There must be some control.
Absolute freedom is a license.
When we come back, yes,
there's one thing that we're not doing here. The thing is that a great majority of our youth are engaged in social media.
Yes. Is that time?
It's their time. They're very active. and they help to sustain it going. So instead of bemoaning, lamentation about the destructive, wave of fake news which is emanating, empowered more by social media platforms, I don't think, well, how do we engage with social media platform to change the narrative? How do we engage the youth?
We're coming to that
through re-education.
Yes, that when we come on the second part,
to be visible on social media and counter this other way.
The second part of the discussion will take care of that. That was why I've been, urging Malam Sani Zuru to please not suppressing you. But when we come back, we'll take a look at that. But in spite of what Malam Sani Zuru talked about the executive, actually, there's one fundamental issue. It is the media organizations themselves. Like, for instance, the NTA. I remember when you showed this book, we have political coverage and handbook, we have news handbook, which we developed by professionals. I think things like that will go a long way. We're coming back with the discussion, just as Dr. Lekki talked about. We are going to observe the way forward. This is Tuesday Live. We'll be back.
Fake news which is shared for malicious purposes is a danger to our peace and security in Nigeria. Misinformation as fake news is a serious threat to our hard-earned democracy and promotes hatred and misunderstanding between our communities. We are all responsible for stopping the spread of fake news in its tracks. So, always check the source and credibility of any news item. Say no to fake news. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information.
Nigerians, our fearless officers and men of the Nigerian military are winning the war against Boko Haram. Today, all occupied territories have been recovered and Boko Haram has been degraded. Our affected brothers and sisters are getting their lives back. However, they are now after you and me. In our mosques, churches, schools, motor parks, markets, entertainment centers, and public gatherings. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me. Nigeria, unite against terrorism.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
The struggle for independence had been a long and tough one. Our founding fathers and compatriots sacrificed their comfort and even shed their blood. We cannot at this point in history afford to spirit away their sacrifices for immediate but temporary gains of today. Let us emphasize what unites and not what divides us. Working for the unity of purpose with a stronger vision for a better tomorrow. NTA, growing with the nation.
Nigeria, the only country we can train with remarkable potentials to excel. Let us believe in ourselves and change our attitude for the sake of our country and generations unborn. Let us revive our cultural values, which are our essence as a nation. Let us renew the spirit of patriotism and hope in our dear country. Do not take or give bribe. Be punctual always. No more African time. We can't expect to be global citizens and operate on African time. Join the queue. Insist that people are attended to on a first-come basis, no matter who they are or where they come from.
Nigeria, good people, great nation.
Make you report any crooked person, object or wakajube movement to police and security agent demo.
The security of our nation now work for all of us, plus including me and you.
Nigeria, make we unite against terrorism. Now, Federal Ministry of Information and Culture bring on this message.
NTA Tuesday Live
a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
You're welcome back. Still Tuesday live on the issues of hate speech, fake news, and the social system generally. I still have with me in the studio Professor Chudi Wazurike, Malam Sani Zoro, Femi Adishino, Dr. Muhammad Mustafa Aleki. Well, I know my colleagues here will like to hear about Vox Populi. We are going to the street and hear the voices of Nigerians on this issue.
Federal government of Nigeria is serious about hate speech. They must surely do something about it. As they are coming up with the NTA, AIT, and other media houses, advertising through the Ministry of Information that hate speech bring violence, that to shun it, and also advise my fellow Nigerians to avoid this hate speech of a thing. Where this is next year, 2019, election is coming up, and if we to continue with this hate speech, it might divide this country, and which is not good. I advise my fellow Nigerians to, in fact, to shun hate speech.
The problem with hate speech is as a result of loss of value system in our own political environment. Because if you understand the concept of a nation or nationhood, you should be able to know that whatever you say has direct impact, negatively or positively, on your nation and the people. So the first place to start is to be able to say, okay, fine, this is my country, I need to defend it. And if you have to live to defend your country, you should be able to know for sure that what you want to say or what you are accepting to be either true or false, you are able to find out the source of it. If you don't find the source of the information you want to share with your neighbor or a friend or even an enemy, you are doing a disservice to your nation. It is not right.
Upbringing. Understand, each speech is all about decorum. If you can handle your temper, you can actually handle how you react to the situations. If you have valid points on ground, you can actually raise them without inciting anybody. You know, it's all about facts. What do you have on ground? What can you tender to prove to the next person that what you are saying is actually, real or true?
Play a role here. There should be sanctions. Any person that is going to broadcast, or there should be sanctions that will be given to these Nigerians that will come out and say, okay, this is what this party is saying, or this is what this person is saying, and then you know it's a lie. So people should place a sanction there. Anything you say that is not true, they should be in charge and then say, okay, you pay this fine. That's how it should be controlled.
I think these views are apt at this stage of our discussion. Let me have a flashback as we started the discussion from the beginning. We talked about the politicians. That is what people always talk about. But from the beginning, the political elites of this country were not doing things as per hate speech. I remember in 1959, during the opening of his campaign towards independence, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, he said, "We begin this journey with charity for all and malice to none." But today, do we have charity for all and malice for none? Let me come to Dr. Lekki. You started speaking about the way of control. How do we have charity for all with malice for none?
Well, I believe we need to engage with key stakeholders, particularly the politicians. I want to believe that the politicians are the ones who are occupying mostly the political, space, and we need to find a way to engage them so that there could be some elements of decorum, civility in some of the things that they do, and take them through some sort of orientation so that they will know that their actions, pronouncements, and things that they including body languages have a lot to do with unsettling the polity. I also believe that we can also take additional steps to address this issue, because this hate speech, which is enabled by social media largely, it's not something that can be wished away. It is there. So since it cannot be wished away, go away, it means there's something that we need to address, and I think we can take a few steps. We can also try to occupy the space itself, so that if it is have to combat it, you know, it's like joining in the mix and then finding a way to disrupt it itself too, you know, and looking for young people who are very smart. Nigeria has an infinite numbers of very talented young people who are doing a lot of things across the globe, and they can do similarly here. Yes. Get them involved, particularly in the political process. For example, I can involve some of them and create this youth, enable them to help to disrupt some of these things, or make them ambassadors, so that to give vent to people who may want to go the other way of practicing hateship, making their platform available for use at hateship. So turn them around and engage them in a much more, you know, result-oriented areas. I also think that, our legislator, Sanizoro, was saying, we need some legislation around this matter. I think we don't need to shy away and, you know, we need to remove the gloves and say, listen, we need to have some regulation, get some laws around these issues. I think the issue of whether we are sanctioning or stifling, you know, free speech, there must be a boundary between free speech and hate speech. Everybody recognizes what is bad, and so we should sanction this. And I think also that takes me to the point of sanction. We need to have sanction for this. Some of these are clearly identifiable. You know, even you can do a search on the web and be able to identify the source of a particular, you know, issue. And I believe the Facebook or so, they already launched it. So we need to find out how this has been done and see how we can launch it to and identify this people and say, because we have enough laws. You know, we have electoral laws that keeps against this sort of behavior as far as hate speech is concerned. So we need to begin to identify practitioners, sanction them, so that this whole impunity that is across all kinds of issues can be stopped as much as possible. So this would be my way, you know, proposed way forward in addressing this issue.
Professor Nwazuruki, are we playing the Machiavellian theory of a leader as a lion and a fox? We bite and we blow in order to cushion the effect of that bite, or we take it headlong, just as Dr. Lekki talked about, in regulation. The authority is concerned with that kind of,
It's a very old debate historically. Whenever there is the rise of a new medium that disrupts the old settled order, it's very, very unsettling, I can tell you. And I would say that the issue in our own time and age is really the place and role of the social media. We've never, in human history, ever seen anything like the social media the way it is. It's really without any regulation, it's uncontrolled, and anybody can throw in anything there, from fake news to all kinds of things. So whatever you're reading, you're just not sure. They may even sound very professional. I was talking about professionalism. How do you even define this? You know, people come across and actually create fantastic looking, fantastic sounding, reasonable media style fake news, as a matter of fact. So it is really an issue. And I share the discomfort and utter shock of some members of this panel at the tone and language of Nigerian forums and the way they debate. It's almost like a mini war. And I would say that my colleagues in diaspora haven't helped us much. I was one of them, having lived there for many, many years. And I can tell you clearly that when the debates go on, all kinds of primitive and all kinds of other distasteful issues are dragged in. As a matter of fact, if you go through what the social media world, or how Nigeria is being represented, let's say if you're a research student, you probably think this country is what it is not. We do have issues, and I think that part of the real problem here is the existential reality of poverty, the reality of lack of voice on the part of those at the bottom of society, elite insensitivity. You can go through it's a very old list and so on. In terms of that sort of elite responsibility, we've not quite met it yet, you know. But I really worry, along with Dr. Lekki, as to where social media is going. I'm not too sure I'm fully converted to the idea of complete regulation. this is what Honorable Sani Zoro's group have to come about, you know. Femi said, you probably could have retabled that motion, that particular bill, and let's see how it. But I understand the politics of it very clearly.
It's all Machiavellian.
It's all Machiavellian, you know. But it addressed a real issue.
Yes.
It's not going away, as he said, you know. It's there,
yes.
you know. But it's also a phase. I'm not too sure whether this is not something that will sort of not go away, you know. We'll sort of settle down as one of the things we have to deal with, you know. It needs some, I would say, some kind of minimalist regulation of some sort, you know, because you don't really want the voice of the opposition to be lost. You don't want the voice of the centers to be lost. You don't want, you know, it's very important for democracy to survive, for all voices to be heard.
Yes.
But everyone has to own up to their own responsibility. So the question is, how do you distinguish between responsible journalism and irresponsible journalism? And how do we distinguish professional journalism and even unprofessional journalism or pretenders to journalism from public opinion?
Yes.
So it's a four-way dynamic. You don't want to suppress public opinion because it's the voice of the people,
yes.
and whatever they say is what they say. But at the same time, some of them are causing civil war online.
Well, when you talk about minimal or not minimal, Sani Zoro has been saying that it's not a Nigerian phenomenon. Nigeria is not alone.
It's a global
game of control.
Everybody's debating this everywhere.
Yes. Mr. Femi, additional. How do you see the situation? How do we combat it? Especially taking a look at the global sphere of things.
Yeah. Well, there are people I call the vocal minority.
The wailers.
They wail about everything.
Yes.
And when they begin to wail, you think there are millions. They may not be up to 10,000. But they are so vocal. They use all the platforms. And you think a huge number of Nigerians are involved. Not really true. I believe that this country has a lot of decent people, a lot of discerning people, a lot of patriotic people. Let them begin to resist this vocal minority that pushes out fake news, that pushes out hate news, that distorts and twists things. Let them resist them. We saw part of it in 2015 election. Candidate Buhari then had everything thrown at him, including the kitchen sink. They threw it at him. Well, at the end of the day, he still prevailed because decent people were able to discern that this is just hatred unnecessarily, and they still voted him. So let us begin to discern between good and evil, between hate and what is true news.
Yes.
When we discern appropriately, those who purvey hate. And I was talking with somebody in that country. He told me that if anybody posts any negative thing, any false thing in any part of that country, within 5 minutes, he was under arrest. Within 5 minutes, if he posts falsehood, if he posts something that can cause disequilibrium in society,
effective tracking system,
effective tracking.
They will smoke him out.
Within 5 minutes.
What country is that? What
Abu Dhabi.
Okay.
It's a much smaller country.
Yes.
But,
just Abuja size.
It's a much
Ruled by
smaller
a
country.
monarchy, right?
Yes,
Alright.
yes.
They know themselves.
Yes.
But even in China,
They
can detect
Yes. So I will subscribe to some form of regulation without muzzling free speech. Like Prof said, yes, we need to listen to all tendencies. But the tendency that refuses to discipline itself, that refuses to be decent, that needs to be dealt with.
Yes, what we are developing, just as Second Republic President said, the development is a long-term process. What it needs is precision and control. We are developing very fast. Do we have the control?
No, we lack control. That's why we are here, I think, gathered. But let me, a little bit, just not joining issues with Professor Chudi. Professor Chudi, about 10 days or so ago, I listened to the complaint of the BBC Hausa service. Mark your BBC Hausa service marked its 60 years this year. You see, some Nigerians cloned their website, complete with their symbol, and they begin to, just post all sorts of fake news and so on. So they now had to, and they have a robust social media platform. So they now had to call the head of that social media platform to explain how do you distinguish between your own genuine platform and the one that has been cloned by Nigerians and posting fake news. So he was explaining. For instance, he said, look out for the followership. We have about 1,900,000 and something followers, but that one, they have very scanty followers. Then he was also talking about the color on the symbol. So this is of a concern everywhere. Now, talking about professionalism and regulation, Prof, you will agree with me that journalism is a profession like architecture, like nursing and midwifery, like any other profession. There is a checklist. Before any trade is considered a profession, you must satisfy that checklist. And one of it is a regulatory mechanism. Without regulatory mechanism, you cannot be called a profession. That is my concern, because I want my own to be classified as a profession. Like you have Nigeria Institute of Public Relations, you have Nigeria Institute of Architecture, you have Nigeria Council for the Regulation of Engineering Profession. That's what they call it. Council for the Regulation of it. So it's
yeah,
not
but they have the
something to be
honorifics that go with that. For instance, somebody says I'm engineer so-and-so,
Yes.
I'm doctor so-and-so.
Yes.
I know what you mean.
Yes.
So the registration of members gives you entree into
Yes.
the to the
Registration
gatekeeping
is
house
one.
of the,
Registration
but everybody
is
is like John Jack.
So it's not a free for all.
Yeah.
You see, if you look at the law profession, it is regulated on 3 stages. 3 stages.
But members
Apart
just
from
don't have-
Nigerian Bar Association,
Yeah, okay.
they have body of benchers.
Yes.
They also have another,
Yes.
that regulate this.
Yes.
You see, journalism, we agree there are certain things. You must have an entry point. That's the qualification. This has been set in the 1992 Act.
Yeah.
So since there is an entry qualification that has been agreed upon, then you must subscribe to an association whose objectives are, among others, to enhance the profession. Guild of Editors is one, Nigerian Union of Journalists is another. You must also subscribe to a code of ethics. And it has been developed since 1979 or 78 by the Nigerian Press Organization. We all have this.
Yes.
But then, where is a regulatory organ that will be able to sanction you and enforce that ethics? Because it is that code of ethics that is now to be enforced.
Yes.
Without that enforcement, you cannot say you are practicing.
But that,
hold on.
That's for conventional.
Yeah,
For
that's
conventional.
for,
Yes,
that,
very
that,
good,
yeah,
very good,
that,
very
that,
good.
that goes for members. But how does the public distinguish between A and B?
Very good. Now, in a postmodern
We don't know who is
society,
who.
we are now in a postmodern society
Yes.
that has been redefined by the digital age.
Yes.
So we now have those practitioners we are talking about who are not licensed to
Absolutely.
practice,
They're not
but
journalists at
who
all.
have
Journalists at all.
confirmed exactly.
They're not journalists
They are
at all.
not journalists. They are just using
They're
the media platform.
they are commentators.
So what I want us to do, for instance, what I want us to do, I want us to follow the direction of Europe.
Yes.
In the last 6 months, you remember, European Union and individual European countries invited the promoters of social media platforms, like the owner of Facebook. Come, let's talk. We are tired of this and this, and he has taken it upon himself to check that in your country we will intervene to make sure that this kind of news or something does not come. You understand what I mean? That is regulation. So our authorities, and I'm happy Femi is here, they should be able to extend invitation to these giants to say, come, we have a problem in Nigeria in our hands. We are being bombarded with this and this and this and this. How do you assist us to check these excesses? That's one.
As a gatekeeper.
As a gatekeeper. Then we need heavy investment in technology, that will also, track all those things as well as nip them in the bud before they cause harm. Before they cause harm, because we must be careful about harm.
Yes.
That's what we're talking about. So in China or in Cameroon or anywhere where provinces, if there is a particular targeted province where there is social breakdown of law and order, they just switch off the internet. I'm not saying that we should be switching off the internet, but that is also regulation for peace, to
Or we can do a simpler thing, which is simply licensed journalists, so that whenever there's an article by somebody, in bracket, with a license, maybe with some other case of honorific, so we know who we're dealing with. And that is the only way to isolate all these other flamethrowers.
Well, you know what, Prof? The political will is what is lacking. We must be able to gather the political will to do this.
But you can also have the profession regulate itself along those lines.
No, you see, that regulation we are talking about, so far what we have, all the newspapers will tell you they have ombudsman. Now, if you complain to that ombudsman, I have never seen them publish apologies on front page of newspapers.
I hear you.
For instance, nobody wants to discredit them. So what we are saying is that compose a body of true ombudsman that will have a lawyer, that will have someone representing public interest, that will have underrepresented people, youth, women, and so on and so forth. So that these people will be saying, no, this is the extent to which the press should apologize, or this is the extent to which the press... So we need to try out all sorts of tricks and mechanisms.
Every situation has to be faced with what is necessary.
I think so.
Yeah. What is necessary today? Is it combating it all hog or minimizing? Let me come to Dr. Leki. You spoke about, yes, those who subscribe the more, the youth, the vibrant members of the society. Yes, we have government intervention, social intervention and what have you program so that we can take the attention of the youth from all these issues. But you see, the social system itself, it thrives on political news. The government is controlling, trying to combat corruption. There's fight against insurgency. The police and all law enforcement agencies want you to come forward and give information. But we lack that. We only pursue the fake news and what have you. How do you see we do, in spite of all the work that we do through the media, the jingles on NTA and National Orientation Agency and what have you? What is the convergent point, as you said earlier, in this respect, facing situation with what is necessary?
I think we need to look at the demographics of this whole thing. And I feel that the youth demographic, that bulge, is very important as a target in terms of curtailing both the incidents and the spread of use of social media for hate speech. Now, Nigeria is a very vibrant youth, demographic, and I think we need to engage them. We need to create more, space to engage them in different forms. Like INEC is doing now, we are going to campus of universities and engaging them. We're going around the 6 geographical zone, Lagos, Abuja, Kano, Enugu. They're just finishing up in Enugu yesterday or so, or today. And engaging the youth and draw them into the space, draw them into goodness, draw them to form platforms that are counterweight, to these other narratives that we don't all want to see. And I think that holds a great deal of promise. We are doing it as an electoral, entity. And I think that we need to see that happening more across the board by different other organizations. If we don't do such thing, I think it should be, like I said, a runaway train, from us.
We have a caller. Maybe he has a panel here too. Okay. You're welcome. This is Tuesday Live. Hello, Tuesday Live, you are on.
Hello.
Hello, go ahead and speak, please.
Hello.
Hello, go ahead and speak.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello.
Go ahead and talk, yeah.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yes, regulation of the media or any other body is not the issue in Nigeria. Our greatest problem is lack of enforcement of laws or sanctions. If we want to do away with hate speech and perhaps hate songs, because I noticed that during the primary conducted by some political parties, especially in the political space, campaigns should be issue-based. Those at the helm should lead by example by minding their choice of words when making pronouncements. It is wrong to allude to any political party's flag bearer as being corrupt or whatever. Propaganda can also constitute fake news. Being economical with the truth or information can lead to fake news. So those managing information for the presidency should also take note of what I'm talking about. I pray we are able to address these issues holistically to sanitize the system. God bless Nigeria.
Amen. Thank you very much. Enforcement of laws campaign should be issues-based.
Political statements.
And political
campaign songs.
Yes, songs,
Campaign
yes.
songs and
Yes.
Aliu, do you know this is the time from 12 midnight up when our children, this is the engagement time with this social media, posting. How I wish they will have time to contribute to this very debate, this particular conversation, because it's about them.
It's about them.
We should be able to attract them so that they will now justify why they are doing what they are doing. That is the way we can gauge whether this thing is working or not. So please keep it up,
Thank you very much. Mr. Additional, yes.
Issue-based
enforcement.
Yes, I think it's just very important. Like that person said, enforcement. New legislation may be needful, but we even have enough. We even have enough in our statute books to throw at those who are doing this antisocial thing. let's begin to see it work. Yeah. There are regulatory agencies. Let them begin to enforce what is in the books. I hear so many phone-in programs, on radio particularly. If you hear the things they say,
very nasty,
right from the dunk pit, the language people use.
Yes.
Let the books be thrown at such stations, for instance.
Yes.
Let's use the laws we have, and then if we have more regulation, that will not muzzle freedom of speech, but control recklessness.
Yes.
Welcome.
Mr. President at inauguration said, our chosen path to this journey, for this journey, is democracy. We shall go it democratically, in a democratic manner. Various sectors of the economy, various institutions of governance and what have you. The media, as Malam Sani Zono said, would have loved the media to be the fastest feet of the realm. It's fundamental on going things democratic way. How do you see this issue, Prof?
Well, you know, Winston Churchill, the great British Prime Minister, used to say that democracy is the worst form of government until you think of the alternative.
Yeah.
And what he had in mind, since he was also a journalist and practicing politician, like Honorable Zoromaya, and in our own early incarnation, the Awolowos, the Azikiwes, the Yakasais, they were all journalist politicians. You know? Myself, we all come from that sort of cloth. Femi is the latest practitioner. I expect for me to run for office sooner or later. That one. You know, but very clearly, the president's observation is a wonderful thing to remember at this point, because sometimes, given all the tensions, I was just asking Dr. Lekki how you manage 89 political parties. That, in my mind, is totally crazy. But maybe in the digital age, they can manage it. They just have an array of little dots representing different things and so on. But very clearly, it shows the great variety of creative tensions. Not all of it is negative. Creative tensions that we have in Nigeria. Very clearly, too, it's very important to always think of where we're going. And the president in that particular speech makes it clear that we're looking for a democratic society. That begs for definition. What is a democratic society? I was recently part of a conference at the Yeradwa Center on whether the Western model of democracy has failed in Nigeria, staged by the Osifa Foundation. I was actually the rapporteur. You know, but the question most of the audience ask, are we even practicing Western-style democracy in the first place?
Exactly.
Well, and my other answer is that we don't have to practice Western. No two democracies are exactly the same. India is not America. America is not Britain. Britain is even different from Germany. Yes. You know, for those who are familiar with the sort of constitutional democratic practices of Central Europeans, Switzerland, the Nordic countries, and so on and so forth, they are totally different from the contestational. Winner can win by one vote that they practice in the Anglo-Saxon model. The French have a different model where they have a buffer. In other words, there's a prime minister who is separately elected from the president. That's all. It's almost like two parallel governments, but they understand that the prime minister deals with the administration, the other one deals with national security and foreign affairs and so on. But all under one governing system. So it's very important that, as the president defined it, we have to then keep on working on what is our own nature of democracy. Yes. And I've written extensively on that. I can tell you very clearly that if there's anything that I would say that is missing, that, say, compared to China, compared to America, compared to other countries, is simply that we don't really have a national philosophy that most people subscribe to. Okay, Nigeria is still a nation in need of a Pan-Africanist philosophy of its own that addresses its needs as a forward-charging leader of the black world. We still don't have that. I've written extensively on what I call instrumental Pan-Africanism. Others have also contributed. But, you know, you write these things, unless there are leaders who take up the ideas and refine them and do something with them, they just, I know that over the years, from the 70s, which was our own intellectual formative stage, there were several attempts. That's why, for instance, Bina First Miss Murtala Mohammed as simply one of the great opportunities that this country lost, because he seemed to understand, to embody that particular quest for Pan-African nationalism. Because without that model, of thinking, of action. Policy lacks content in a way. Yeah, you know, we just make policies dictated by IMF, World Bank. What is the parameter of analysis? What are we even doing? So without some sort of and this is affecting our children. That's the point we're making. In other words, they're just part of the flowsome and jetsam of a globalized world.
That's what they are.
They are thinking. A kid who is 15 to 16 is in a different world from most of us.
Yes, Prof.
So I really worry.
I deliberately brought about this assertion of Mr. President during his speech. Number one, because from 1999, when this political dispensation started, there was an air of freedom after 15-year military rule. And the media, the people, everybody said what they want to say. And today, we are meeting the same issue. Secondly, when you talk about raising the youth, I remember late Alhaji Maitamasule said, we need Afrocracy. What you say, the perspective of Africa. We need our own peculiar system so that we have values. That is why what this is hinged on, alternative dispute resolution, and what we need to practice. Was the air of freedom too much? That is why we have hate speech. Listen, if you listen to this person that called from Jos, he said, I only know Buhari. Because he was tired of hate speech and what have you. I don't want to restrict ourselves to the political elite. From across you know, the social system. Is the freedom too much kind of democratic way?
Can we actually say that truly? But I think
or the issue of control,
drawing boundaries and responsibilities and accountability, and the fact that people must play by the rules, and the rules must be seen by all to be kept. And those who are expected to police the rule are seen to be very altruistic about policing the rules and ensuring that if there are infractions, those infractions are detectable and they are detected, and action is taken to nip them in the bud. That is way of the way in which we have really failed, because there is there's so much impunity and there is no sanction, even when there are glaring evidence of people who are infracting the rules. And I think that is where we can't say that there's too much freedom. I think the converse is that there's been a failure to live up to responsibility to ensure that accountability also goes with freedom.
Yes. Mr. Femedisha.
Yes, I believe there must be boundaries. But then one thing that is also very important is self-regulation now. Particularly among the youths and those who are given to excesses. They must learn to self-regulate. There's a saying that make yourself a honest man, and there's one rascal less in the world. If you make yourself a honest man, there's one crook less in the world. So if those who use this social media decide that, one, I will not share what I am not sure of. You know, some people share a lot of things that turns out to be fake, that turns out to be disruptive, that turns out to be divisive of society. They just share. You are a partaker of the evil already. But if you determine that I will not be part of this phenomenon, I will not share it, I will not subscribe to it, then there is a self-cleansing process that is started. So let all those who use this thing determine to self-cleanse and to self-regulate, and then we're beginning to then get out of that evil cycle and phenomenon.
Yes. Is the value system derailing, kind of? Do we go back to the basic? We go back to the community values and what have you, the traditional system of authority and the checks and balances among the social system, not just only the institutions of governance.
So you see, those traditional values you're talking about, a lot of them have disintegrated. And I'm afraid you cannot actually recoup them. This is the 21st century that is defined, you know, as a post-modern society. And a lot of things have happened. The demographics have changed. The thought processes have changed. So many things have changed. Now, what I will also endorse like my fellow panelists, is that we work with all these multiple or multidisciplinary approaches. First of all, we should encourage self-regulation. We should encourage the ombudsman that is entrenched in this. Then we must also work with legislations. Then the other modern ways of tackling these matters by investing in technology, by gathering the political will also to ensure that while we do not muzzle press freedom or freedom of speech like the prof has been professing, but we must also, the prof has been professing this, I can see it's very sensitive.
Yes,
but prof, we must also say people must be mindful of freedom after the speech.
Yes. Yes.
I think that is why the point is. That's my take.
All right. Well, I saw Dr. Leahy was making some points. You want to say something?
No, I was just thinking about the traditional systems.
Yes.
What role they have to play in this. I think perhaps that preaching from the pulpit, you know, they have a role to play and appealing to people's conscience.
Conscientization.
And talking to them, and these things can all be streamlined in the different faiths. Since a lot of people, Nigeria is supposed to be a very religious country.
Yes.
And then I think that could be another avenue, and they need to be spoken to and for them to rise to the challenge.
I know the one that didn't want to say something.
Yes, I like what Dr. Lecky brought in.
He's a pastor. He's a catechist.
I like what Dr. Lecky brought in. From the pulpit, you hear things that boggle your mind.
Yes.
From the pulpit at times. You hear bishops, you hear archbishops, you hear priests.
They are the head speakers.
They are the head speakers.
Yes, they are.
Head speakers. You know, on one Sunday, one woman called me in the afternoon and said, I felt like going to slap my pastor in the pulpit today. That what he was spewing all through.
Incitement.
Incitement and his speech. Very sad. Very sad. If you could hear things like that from the pulpit.
Yeah, well, religious figures have often been polarizing. You know, and that's an issue. You know, but going back a little to the larger issue, which is simply what we do. I think that there's no question that you can't shout fire, fire in a closed theater. We're not simply saying free speech is a licentious speech. No. I mean, you know, certain things could be criminalized. You know, if you tell clear-cut lies, for instance, if you say things that perhaps are terroristic, or things that perhaps are criminal in nature, there ought to be a way to criminalize and punish under the laws of this country. So let's just be very clear. In the criminal delinquency is not something that should be accepted by Nigeria for any reason at all. Whether it's online, offline, it doesn't really matter.
Let's close this discussion by having a reflective mood on Nigeria. Nigeria is a land of many contrasts, a land of many bounties of common historical antecedents. And indeed, no single feature could do full justice to the numerous attractions and bounties of Nigeria, but fundamentally it's the human resource. Let's observe the human resource to be a vehicle for development, rather for disintegration. Let me start from you. Just 1 more minute, yes, the Prof.
Okay, well, yeah, I'll just simply conclude by saying that Nigeria should be looked upon as a glass of water, half full or half empty. You know, it should be looked upon as a work in progress. Instead, you look at Nigeria as an entity moving somewhere, however ungainly. And those of us who take a Pan-African stand understand that we're now in what we call the 6th stage of the Pan-African journey, and so on. So that way, it's easier for us to understand some of the tensions and so on as part of the growing headaches. It doesn't mean that the world's about to collapse. It just means that there should be more sophisticated laws, there should be more sophisticated ways of thinking, there should be a vibrant executive intervention where that's necessary. But again, I rest that human freedom and human capacity should be allowed free reign. That's how come you have all these creative wonders that Nigerians are doing all over the world. Because they're the product of a free society. But freedom has responsibility. And that's the issue here. It's a work in progress.
Dr. Leahy.
Well, coming from the electoral management body, I would think that the issue of good governance is an overarching issue, and I think it can promote or discourage these kinds of practices.
Can you disqualify a politician who's perpetrating hate speech?
Yeah, there are laws in the statute that can disqualify a politician. It's simply an issue of bringing up the charge against such a politician, and then he faces the rules, and the laws of the land.
Yes.
Clearly, well stated. But coming back to the issue of good governance, and I think that good governance is everybody's responsibility. It's not the responsibility of a particular administration. And I think the foundation for that is our engagement and participation in the electoral process. We have an election coming next year. People should come out and participate in large numbers so that they can help to presage good governance in Nigeria.
Yes.
Once we have good governance, going and have it sustained going, I think a number of these things will begin to sort of, take care of that. It will create the ambience and atmosphere to address a number of these anomalies, because there will be less room for people to vent, wrong things, as an attack against the lack of good governance going in the country. Yes. So I think people should come out and engage in the process, collect their PVCs. I must take a point to say that. We still have millions of them uncollected, and participate in the electoral process. We have many parties now to choose from, over 91 political parties. We have over 83 million Nigerians registered to vote. They should all 83 come out million to vote on election day. Yes. And let's usher in good governance that will bring about a much more ambient environment that will discourage the practice of hate speech in Nigeria.
Mr. Additional.
Well, hate speech targets emotional and emotive issues. Your religion, your ethnicity, your biases, things that are incendiary. And when you throw one hate speech, you never know where the ricochet will reach. For instance, villages that are wiped out, you never know where the seed was sown. It could even be by an imam, it could be by a pastor. It may not happen today, tomorrow, next week, it could be 2 months.
Yes.
But the seed was sown somewhere. A general that was driving through Duradu ended up in a disused well. It could be that seed had been sown months earlier by a traditional leader, by a religious leader. Let's be careful.
Yes.
Let's watch what we say.
Well, I'm not happy that Nigeria has refused to develop, and that the Nigerian political elite, most especially, has tended to subvert the tenets of democracy, like it was obtained in the last primary elections, which is actually the leadership recruitment process, and in all the parties, they just refuse to implement internal democracy. But I'm very jealous of countries like Ethiopia and Rwanda, smaller countries that have moved forward. Ethiopia today has given 50% of all positions to women as well as to the useful population. They have brought a foreign service staff, woman, a female ambassador, today is the president. Today we are all trooping to Rwanda. You know, that witnessed genocide, to say they have abolished referring to their nationals as Tutsis or something like that.
Yes.
I'm very jealous of that, and I do dream that as we evolve, Nigeria will one day get the right leaders that will propel us to that zenith.
Thank you very much, Madam Sani Zoro, for honoring our invitation. Thank you very much. Mr. Femi Adishina, thank you very much. Dr. Muhammad Mustafa Leki. I'm Malam Leki. Multidisciplinary. Professor Chudi Mazurike. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Well, that has been Tuesday Live. But it reminds me what Malam Sari Zuru talked about. He's been jealous of other, do we say smaller economies that have been making progress? It reminded me of during our days of listening to music, especially reggae music, Eric Donaldson, he said the progress you make is not always the rich you are. What we need is collective responsibility and deliberate efforts. Just as Mr. President said, with the democracy and what we are doing today is an opportunity. Let's take it. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.